Have you ever stopped to think about what your brain is capable of when you're not, well, when you're not looking? Like when you're completely deeply asleep? We think of sleep as downtime, a time for our bodies and minds to rest. But for some people, it's a time for bizarre, complex, and sometimes terrifying action. So picture this. It's May 24th, 1987. A 23-year-old man named Kenneth Parks, jobless and drowning in debt, drives to a police station. He's covered in blood, and he walks in and confesses to a truly horrific crime. But then comes the twist. The kind of twist that turns this from a straightforward crime story into a deep neurological mystery. His lawyers made a claim that sounds impossible. His defense was that he wasn't conscious, that he was asleep the entire time. This one single case forces us to ask a really unsettling question. Is it actually possible to commit a violent crime without a guilty mind? Let's dive in and see if we can figure that out. Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around how a defense like this could possibly work, we have to look closer at the really strange and frankly completely bizarre details of the Kenneth Parks case. I mean, on the surface, it looks pretty open and shut. He drove 22 kilometers, he attacked his in-laws, and tragically killed his mother-in-law. But when you look at the details, nothing makes sense. He had these deep, terrible wounds on his own hands, but he felt no pain. That's a huge red flag for some kind of disconnected mental state. And maybe the biggest piece of the puzzle, there was no motive. By all accounts, he loved his in-laws. It just didn't add up. To make sense of any of this, we've got to leave the courtroom behind for a minute and step into the world of neuroscience. We need to decode what's actually happening inside the brain during one of these episodes. Okay, so the official medical term is somnambulism. And the most important part of this definition, the real key, is that it happens during non-REM sleep. This is not about acting out your dreams. This is a whole different beast. See, our sleep isn't just one long block of unconsciousness. We actually cycle through different stages, and each cycle lasts about 90 to 110 minutes. We drift from light sleep, down into deeper sleep, and finally hit stage N3, which is the deepest stage of all. It's only after that we pop up into REM sleep, which is where most of our vivid dreaming happens. And sleepwalking? It happens way down there in stage N3, the absolute deepest part of your sleep. And this chart lays it out perfectly. In REM sleep, your brain is super active, almost like it's awake, but your body is basically paralyzed. That's nature's little safety feature to stop you from literally running after the monsters in your dreams. But in NREM sleep, especially that deep stage N3, it's the total opposite. Your brain is mostly offline, but your body is free to move. And that's the window. That's where sleepwalking gets its chance. So what this all boils down to is that sleepwalking is basically a glitch in the wake-up process. It's an incomplete awakening. The parts of your brain that control walking, talking, and doing complex things can just switch on, while the parts responsible for reason, for memory, for consciousness, they stay completely out of it. It's like the driver is asleep, but someone left the car's engine running. The body is on autopilot. And what is that autopilot brain capable of? Well, this is where things get really wild. The range of things people do while sleepwalking goes way beyond just stumbling to the bathroom. It can be mundane, sure, but it can also be creative, and in some very rare cases, even criminal. I mean, just check out this spectrum. You have Lee Hadwin, the sleep artist, who can't draw for beans when he's awake, but he creates these incredible works of art completely asleep. There's a guy named Robert Wood, the sleepwalking chef, who whips up full meals, omelets, and everything. Even the famous cricketer Sachin Tendulkar was known to wander around his room at night. All these examples show us that the sleeping brain can pull off some seriously complex skills. And that makes the criminal potential, as rare as it is, seem terrifyingly possible. Okay, so this all leads to the obvious next question. Why? Why does this happen to some people and not to others? What's pulling the trigger on this bizarre brain state? Well, it turns out that while things like stress and not getting enough sleep definitely play a part, the single biggest predictor might just be in your DNA. Yep, sleepwalking is hereditary. It literally runs in families. And this data is just mind-blowing. If neither of your parents has a history of sleepwalking, your chance of being a sleepwalker as a kid is around 22%. Okay. But what if one of your parents was a sleepwalker? Boom, your chance jumps to over 47%. And if both of your parents were,
Whoa, it skyrockets to over 61%. Your genes are clearly loading the dice here.
But, genetics isn't the whole story. Think of your genes as the loaded gun, and these other things are what can pull the trigger. Being severely sleep deprived or under a ton of stress can absolutely set off an episode. Conditions like sleep apnea, which constantly disrupt your sleep, are another major cause. So it's really a 1-2 punch, the genetic predisposition, and then a trigger that kicks it all off.
All right, so now that we have all this science at our back pocket, let's head back to the courtroom. We know the brain can perform these complex actions while asleep, but how does the law actually deal with that? This right here is the absolute key to the entire legal argument. To convict someone of a crime like murder, prosecutors have to prove two things. First, that you did the act, and second, that you intended to do it. They call this the guilty mind. And the whole sleepwalking defense hinges on this one idea. The body may have done it, but the mind, the intent, was completely missing in action.
Now, this defense isn't some new, crazy idea. It's been tested in courtrooms all over the world, but it is super controversial and success is never, ever guaranteed. It often boils down to the tiny, specific facts of the case, as you're about to see when we compare two of these famous examples. Take the case of Scott Falliter in the U.S. This was about 10 years after the Parks case, and he used the exact same defense after killing his wife. But for him, it failed. Spectacularly. So why the different outcome? Well, just look at the actions. He didn't just commit the crime. He hid the weapon in his car, he bagged up his bloody clothes in a Tupperware container, he changed his clothes. A neighbor even saw him putting on gloves. To the jury, that just screamed cover-up. It seemed way too complex, too purposeful to be the work of a sleeping brain on autopilot. Which brings us all the way back to Kenneth Parks, because in his case, the jury, they actually believed it. Unlike Falter, his actions, as violent as they were, lacked that element of concealment or planning. He didn't try to hide anything. I mean, he drove straight to the police and confessed. By all accounts, he was confused and totally unaware of what he'd done. The medical experts backed his story up, and so in a verdict that shocked just about everyone, he walked free. These legal cases are fascinating, for sure. But for the millions of people who actually sleepwalk, this isn't a legal defense. It's a real and sometimes dangerous part of life. And for most sleepwalkers, the biggest risk isn't hurting other people, it's hurting themselves. So for anyone living with this, safety becomes priority number one. It's all about creating a safe environment. Removing sharp objects, making sure all the doors and windows are locked up tight, putting safety gates on stairs. For people with really severe cases, simple things like door alarms can be literal lifesavers, alerting family members that an episode is happening. And all of this leaves us with one final, kind of profound thought. Sleepwalking proves that there can be this incredible, shocking disconnect between our actions and our awareness. It shows us that a part of our brain can operate with amazing sophistication. It can drive a car, it can cook a meal, it can create art, all while we are completely checked out. So it really makes you wonder, if our brains can do that, what other mysteries are locked away in our sleep every single night, long after we've closed our eyes?